Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today, I've got the fabulous Kimberly with me, and I'm going to ask her the question I ask every single guest. Hey, Kimberly, why did you become a carnivore?
Well, the carnivore diet was a foreign topic to me. I came from a 12-year vegan diet where when I went away to college, I learned what everyone else's idea of health was. I grew up on a farm, so I had always had meat in my family. We'd always had a meat and a carb and a vegetable. My parents made sure that we grew up with a really healthy diet that was balanced. We had puffed rice for breakfast. And, we always had a farm. We always had farm animals that we raised. And that was a beautiful part of my childhood. But what caused the big transition for me was going away to college, being exposed to Vegucated and all the vegan propaganda movies that were being pushed. And people were coming on campus and promoting, passing out pamphlets and showing us the vegan diet, what it meant to not harm an animal. And I love animals so much, I couldn't even imagine wanting to eat the animal anymore. And so I first started the vegetarian way of eating my freshman year of college in 2009. When I went to the doctor, I stopped having regular bowel movements. Now, give you a whole background in just a nutshell. I have had gut issues since I was born. I was never able to take breast milk. I had to be put on special formula. I've just really, really struggled with my gut. And so here I am almost 33 years later, finally understanding why my gut is so sensitive and what my gut needs to thrive. So bring that all forward of why did she become a vegan? What led her to this journey? Well, like I said, I went to the doctor, laid down on the bed, and I said, listen, I'm not having bowel movements at all. I'm severely constipated. I'm having severe gut pains where I'm missing classes repeatedly. I'm walking hunched over. I couldn't stand up straight. The pain was so bad in my small intestine. Just imagine, for you visual people, having a knife stabbing into your small intestines to the point where you can't breathe and you just want to curl up in the fetal position. It was like that every single day. And my doctor pushed down on my stomach and I nearly almost threw up. It was that bad. And he's like, you need more vegetables. And, we only have one primary care physician here in our small town. And so I'm like, okay, you got it. He's like, more fiber and more vegetables. And that was my goal. I left the doctor that day saying, I'm going to eat as many vegetables as I can. And so I started researching psyllium husk. I started researching Benefiber, Miralax, all of these different fibers to help me go to the bathroom. My mom had put me on Fiber One cereal when I was 14 years old. And that was just as a breakfast. And then I got into Fiber One bars. And then I just was a complete fiber explosion to help me go to the bathroom. And so the more and more I got down that rabbit trail, I graduated college, was fully vegan in 2012. And I had moved to Nashville. And many people don't know this, but I moved to Nashville for 6 months with my aunt. And I connected with a PETA, the People Against Ethical Treatment of Animals. She had saw my Instagram or something in social, I think it was MySpace at the time. And she reached out to me from Virginia. She was in Alexandria, Virginia. And she asked me if I would be willing to go to their state representative meeting and fight against the ag-gag bill. Now, the ag-gag bill was closing doors to where people could not see what was happening in factory farms. And so I'm like, yes, I'm going to go and I'm going to wear my vegan shirt and I'm going to go and represent you and I'm going to let them know what they're doing is wrong. And so I remember walking into this courtroom in the middle of Nashville, and it was at their state, I know this, I'm probably completely ruining this, but their state representative or their state capitol building. And I remember going in there and I stood up and, voiced and did exactly what PETA told me to do. They'd given me an outline of what to say and how to argue back and what were the points that I needed to communicate. And then I remember there was a gentleman that stood up. And he was a factory farm. He had owned over 800,000 acres of land across the United States. He was connected to Tyson and Purdue. And I remember after that segment, he came and pulled me aside and started asking me questions about, why I was afraid of eating meat and what my problem was. And I really just wanted to understand where he was coming from. And he gave me his card and I had left. And so I fell in love with the idea of using my voice for the ethical treatment of animals. And that was one of the big reasons why I did go vegan, was because I felt that we were doing a disservice to the environment and to animals. Lo and behold, as the years went on, it became a disservice to me. It really, really wrecked my body. It wasn't until 2020 when every bit of intake that I was doing from my food was completely wrecking my gut. My skin, it looked like I'd broken out in melasma. I had severe skin discoloration. My gut, if you look on previous pictures, you can see where my gut looks like I'm 6 months pregnant, just completely swollen. My food was coming out the same way that it was going in, completely undigested. And I knew there was something severely wrong because I was rapidly losing weight. And so I went to the doctor and he prescribed antidepressants as a way to help my gut, to calm down whatever was stimulating my gut inflammation. And because my mental health was so bad, I was losing weight. I was very thin, just completely unhealthy. And it wasn't to say that I wasn't doing things right. And that's something that I need you to hear. There's no, and I know this is going to sound wrong, but when people go vegan and their health fails, it's not that they were doing it wrong. It's that the diet doesn't work for them. And I need you to hear that. Because people say, well, you didn't vegan hard enough. No, I veganed so hard that it almost killed me. Did you want me to vegan harder? Because I cooked everything from scratch. I did all the foods raw. I did all the salads correctly. I food combined. I took my supplements. I got my B12. I got enough sleep. But that was not working for my body. And so if you are struggling, please don't think that you have to vegan harder, because that plays into the development of so many health conditions. You can't outsmart a diet that doesn't work for your body. And that's one thing that I had to learn. I had hit my breaking point. I had learned that this was no longer servicing me, and it was breaking my heart. I'm not a sad person. I'm very vibrant. I'm very outgoing. I mean, I would talk to a wall if it would give me the time of day. I'm such an extrovert. And I saw that begin to go away. Just little parts of your personality begin to leave you when your diet isn't giving you the nutrients you need. And so when I went full carnivore, I just fell in love with the energy and the vitality that I gained. I put on 30 pounds, my skin went away. I stopped wearing makeup, and not to say that I don't wear it every now and then, but I fell in love with just the natural beauty of who I am. And just seeing my skin heal, seeing my gut heal, seeing my inflammation go down and those stabbing gut pains going away. I can't emphasize enough how important animal proteins are for your body.
Well, that's just a fabulous answer. Thank you. That's very interesting. And I did hear you when you said that you weren't doing it wrong, because that's such an easy way out for people to poo-poo your experience. And it's absolutely heartbreaking, because the people I speak to that are ex-vegans, I mean, you were really in it. I mean, you were representing PETA. You were there. How did you, in your mind, get over the environmental issues and the ethical issues?
Well, when I first went carnivore, I remember telling myself, we're going to go all in, no limits. And I had to rewire my brain. There's a lot of psychology that goes into changing our food behaviors and our outlook on food that is often under discussed. And so I just want to emphasize, if you're struggling with your thoughts around certain foods, you have to reframe that food, and you have to take the morality out of it. And that's what I had to do. The first time I went into the grocery store, I started crying and I'm like, oh my God, we're walking past the salads and I'm going to buy beef. And so for me, it was just reframing, this is good for me. And once I made that mind-body connection of how I feel in my brain and how I feel in my body, it no longer became this big mountain that I needed to come over. Like, oh my gosh, there's so many animals being hurt. It's actually a part of human nature. Something has to die for us to live. If you go into the grocery store and you buy lettuce, sometimes a fly dies and gets trapped in its wrapping. I've bought salad before, and you can see like a dead bug that's wrapped up in your package of salad. Something has to die for you to have life. And I know that that's hard. It doesn't mean that I don't love animals. You know, I have a farm currently at my parents' house. We're raising 5 cows. We're raising over 35 chickens. And yeah, it's sad to see that soul pass. But at the end of the day, that is truly a way of living, to be able to raise something and then give it back to your family to ensure the vitality and life of their body.
I absolutely think that's 100% how I feel, because I used to be high carb and I had my own fruit and veg patch, and that was like chemical warfare. You know, because if I wanted to grow potatoes, I had to kill butterflies. I had to kill the bugs, green flies. I had to stop mice. I had to stop rabbits having a go at my carrots. Had to. So you are stopping those animals, and that's what a pesticide is. And I think it's quite interesting, because I feel the same as you. I love animals. If I go out and I see cows grazing on the field, they wouldn't be there if the vegans had their way. There would be no animals doing that. There'd be no sheep. There'd be no cows. There'd be no goats, because it wouldn't be viable for the farmer to keep them for fun. I mean, it is a business. Those cows, they provide a lot of nutrition for a huge amount of people. So when you look at the body count, you know, for a peach compared to a steak, the body count to get that peach to you, and the energy, you know, flying it around the world and all that thing that, you know, fruit is now 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. None of that's natural. That's huge amounts of energy and air miles, and even soil is dead animals, because soil is made, you know, from fossils. And it's incredible that people can't see what you just said. I love how you said it. You said it better. I mean, basically, you can get a lettuce in some plastic and you'll see a bug in there that sadly got caught. Out of many, many hundreds and hundreds that have been killed, you know, and there is no life without death. It's sad. And I think that's the thing I agree with you on, is you can still love animals and be carnivore. Absolutely. And it's like, you know, and you get into the way they're treated. I'm not into sort of caged animals. I'm into pastured animals. So one of the things I feel, I don't know if you'll agree with me, is that the vegans and the carnivores should stop arguing with each other and join forces to talk to the food producers and say, right, we're humans. We want meat this way. We want fruit and veg this way. We don't want your processing. We don't want chemicals. But I think it's very handy for the food companies to have us at loggerheads. I really do. I just think we're all humans. If someone's vegan, like you're a great example. Sorry, I very rarely talk about meat in these, but you've really touched a nerve there. Vegans don't go vegan because they don't care. They're vegans because they care. And yes, you're right. Some of it seems like brainwashing, and some of the information just doesn't stand up, but it seems to, and people do it. They don't do it because they don't care about things. So I like anybody that cares about their health, certainly more than someone that's not vegan, not carnivore, and just doing the standard American diet and being really sick and ill. So yeah, so you've lived both lives, haven't you? And the fiber answer to your bowel movements is so wrong, isn't it? I mean, let's focus on poop for a second. Sorry to do that, but I mean, you were given lots of fiber and all that as advice. Now you're carnivore. Is it better without all the fiber?
Oh my gosh, that's like the train that I will ride forever. I love when I talk to my mom about this, and I'll be like, Mom, for the first time, I'm actually having normal bowel movements, where when I have so much fiber and I have vegetables, it's a painful experience to go to the bathroom, and nobody knows what I'm saying. And I'll talk about bowel movements any day. Talk about it with my doctor, my friends, I don't care. But until you go to the bathroom and you're in so much pain where you would rather not have a bowel movement than go, you'll understand the why behind my passion. And now, because butyrate, which is found in saturated fatty acids, the certain gut bugs in your large and small intestine, they actually ferment down butyrate, which helps to line that mucosal barrier for a smoother transaction and release without damaging that mucosal lining, because it's as paper thin as like a sheet of paper. So you really have to be careful, because when you mess up that thin mucosal barrier, then you're leaking out all of your food, which causes leaky gut into the bloodstream. So when you feed your gut bugs, not just fiber, but butyrate and these different fatty acids, they actually protect that lipid bilayer that helps a smoother transit of exiting those nutrients.
And this is brilliant, because your role as a PhD student in health science is now shining through. And that's a really interesting topic, because the vegan side of things says don't eat saturated fat. And then they hang on to this thing about fiber and the short chain fatty acids. Well, what is the fats that are made? Saturated fat. What does the body make? The body makes saturated fat, so it doesn't make any sense. But I'm also into the fact that you don't need any fiber whatsoever, because I had the same thing. I didn't want to go to the toilet because it was a nightmare and uncomfortable. So I'm glad that that's resolved. So how did you get into wanting to teach this? You're very passionate. How did that happen?
I've always loved health and nutrition. I've always wanted to pursue health. That's something that I've just enjoyed. And recently, or about a year or two ago, I started teaching high school biology. And then I started my PhD. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was teaching elementary school. And I remember I went outside for my morning walk at 5 a.m. and I was listening to research. And I remember looking up at the stars and I started crying. And I'm like, there has to be a way that I can be doing this full time. Like, I have to be doing this. This is my purpose. And I would feel like I was robbing myself of this experience in life if I were to continue to do something just to make money. And I don't know, ever since I had that moment with God, it was like everything shifted, and this complete transition and falling in love with what I teach now is high school biology. And it's so funny because I will, come into class and get my classes all set up, and my kids will come in and they just look at me, and I'll be so excited teaching. I'll start sweating and I'm like, did you guys think about this? And then what about this? And why didn't you ask a question about this? And did you see what the body just did here? And look at this, guys, ask questions about your health. No one can take your health away from you but you. And I'm teaching kids at a young age that are so vulnerable how to take care of their body. And you know what? I may never make six figures, but I can tell you one thing: those kids are going to keep and instill the little bit of truth that I've given them that goes against the narrative that they have been ingrained, just like we have been ingrained as children.
Yeah, that's great. You're fighting the good fight. I've never mentioned this actually in any of my interviews, but I also have an honours degree in English, and I went into schools and taught special needs kids how to read. And the reason I stopped is because I was being successful, but I wasn't following the protocol. I wasn't ticking all the right boxes. It didn't matter that my little group of 6 children that had never read a book, never read a chapter book, within one term were reading chapter books, and their parents were, absolutely so happy that their kids could read and not be bottoming the spelling tests. But when I was observed, I didn't fit the way of teaching they wanted to teach, which was boring. And my argument was, well, look, every child I see has been in the school system. and it's failed them. They don't want to read because we're making books which are exciting, like you just said. We're making it boring. We should be reading books for fun, and they do now read books for pleasure. And that's why they're enjoying it and getting better at it, because it's fun. Anyway, and you're the same there. I think making a difference. And I love what the other thing you said is you're not going to make six figures necessarily. Well, yeah, I'm never going to be rich from this because we're fighting against the money. We're fighting against commercial interests. A lot, so much basically. But I think your passion is coming through the screen more than I was expecting, which is really, really good. So you're a biology teacher, and I same when I did my physiology studies. Every single time I learned something new, I was thinking, isn't that amazing? Wow, that happens, isn't it? And when I was researching plants and toxins, I actually thought, wow, these are really clever. Look at this, they can make an insect infertile by producing some estrogen. It's magic. It really is what plants do. But anyway, we shouldn't be eating them. That's the thing. So you decided to do a PhD. That's a big step though. So when did you do that?
I'm actually going into my third year in August. And so I have one more year of classes, and then next year I start my dissertation. And I'm going to be doing it on hopefully like gene expression and an animal-based diet. I'm very passionate about the gut-brain connection. When I am inflamed in my gut, my mental health is dropping like that. If I eat too little fat, my mental health goes down. I mean, I am so deeply connected to how my body feels and responds to what I'm eating. And just when I have like chicken one day, the next day I'm like, kind of, whereas when I have meat, I'm like, oh my God, do you want to go play? Do you want to skate? What do you want to do? It's like, I have so much energy. I recover from the gym. I sleep like a rock, solid bowel movement. And so it's very intriguing to me. I want to see what genes get turned on and off by the saturated fats that I'm eating, by the protein synthesis that is occurring on a cellular level. I'm very interested in that. And so I love my program. It focuses a lot on the healthcare system and how it's broken. And that to me has been so amazing. Like my current teacher, he is a doctor as well. And he emailed me and goes, I love that you're talking about how broken our system is. Maybe you could make a difference. And I said, well, you know what? I wanted to go to medical school, but who can afford that? I'm like, I can't afford that. I have to work to take care of myself. And we make it harder for the healthcare system to evolve. It's not affordable across the board. Now, certain populations have easy access to care. We have good median salary jobs. We are offered healthcare here in the United States. We don't have language barriers, right? We don't have inaccessibility. We can easily go to the doctor and get our needs met. Think about other vulnerable populations that are listening to your podcast that have language barriers. They don't understand what illness and disease are. They connect to health by connecting to nature. They connect to disease by disconnecting from their body. And we don't teach that in healthcare. We don't teach that in the foods that we eat. In other populations, the way that they look at food is nourishment, mind, body. They're connecting with the animal and becoming one with that animal. When you look at tribes in other countries, they pride themselves on raising that animal up, slaughtering it and feeding a tribe and ensuring their babies and their wives all have nourishment to continue on. Us here in America, we undervalue and underappreciate what we do with our fork and the food we put on our plate, because we can call Amazon and have it shipped. We could go to a grocery store. We can have our food delivered. We are so spoiled here that we don't understand the value of the food on our plate.
I mean, that is amazing to talk about that, because it disheartens me so much that some people will go to the supermarket, get a box of something, go home, put it in a microwave, sit in front of the TV and open their box basically and eat from this box. And I genuinely think half the time they don't know what they're actually doing. They're not really tasting it. They're not getting the satiety signals. And the food processing is all geared to make you addicted and want more. And it's never about health. It's always about cheap ingredients. So I think what you're doing, trying to be part of this, breaking the system and getting it mended is very commendable. It is hard, isn't it? Because we are fighting such a big system. But I think the more and more we spread the word, the better it is. And we have to vote with our feet and do the right thing and try and buy local and try. I mean, I support 3 local farmers. I don't really use the supermarkets. I might use the supermarket one every 6 months. So I think, you know, I just take my hat off to you. It's really amazing. So you mentioned a few things there. And you said about the gut brain sort of connection, and you sort of implied that it was for you down to not eating enough fat. Do you think it is as simple as that?
Yes, I listened to a recent podcast study by Andrew Huberman, and he was investigating on the role saturated fatty acids play. Those molecules, they actually bind to the receptors in the brain that produce the neuron functioning. So when you ingest saturated fatty acids, what happens is they get broken down and digested in the large intestines. Those signals then travel up to the brain, which help with neuron function, creating different neuron impulses and neuron pathways for optimal mental health. I can tell you firsthand, when I ate a zero-fat diet and I was eating protein, I had protein shakes, protein powders. I had all the vegan proteins. I was getting enough protein, but I was definitely afraid of fat. I thought that the narrative was that fat's going to make me fat, right? And I don't want to be unhealthy. But I can tell you now, I will eat beef fat raw. I love my fat. When I go and buy a steak, it has to have fat on it. And I feel so calm. It's like this amount, like automatically, I have zero inflammation in my body. I feel a sense of peace and calm. And if you on the other end of this podcast are hearing that and you have a fear of fat, trust me, it is a steroid hormone that creates all kinds of signaling for your steroid hormones and optimal mental health. It can be as easy as that, but it can also be very complex.
And I think people that are watching will see that here is somebody in front of them, Kimberly, who is eating plenty of fat and is pretty lean. So this stupid phrase about the fat that you eat is the fat you wear is absolutely ludicrous. And I've got just hundreds of clients that have increased their fat and lost tons of weight. So don't be scared of fat purely because you believe, because it's got the same word, fat on your body, as fat on your food, it's going to make you fat, because that just isn't the case. And we could get into the politics and we can get into the 1948 Ansel Keys rubbish and all the corruption, but I don't really want to get down that route. But anyway, that's brilliant. So there will be people that want to know practically what you're doing. So are you an OMAD sort of person or a 2MAD? What do you do?
For me, when I wake up in the morning, I wake up really early. I am a morning person. I have to have I eat about 1,000 calories for breakfast, sometimes more. I have to have breakfast before I go to work. I have to. I don't believe in fasting all day. That just doesn't work for me. I've got to eat a heavy, big breakfast as much as I can, because I'm going into work and I need my brain to be sharp and on point. I am teaching, educating for 8 hours. And as a teacher, I don't have time. I barely get time to go to the bathroom. We're holding our bladder from the moment we get to work until nearly the time we leave. So I eat enough calories to get me through my workday. And then when I come home, I have my dinner. I'll have a good, decent dinner. And I try to eat, I usually get home around 4:30 and I have a big dinner. And then that gives me a few hours to let my food settle before I lay down for bed. And then I'm not digesting all of that food while I'm trying to get a good night's rest. But to me, breakfast is everything. Like, I've got to have my solid breakfast every day.
Great answer. People shouldn't be scared to have breakfast. I know many people avoid it and don't start until midday. Listen to your body, I think, is the clue here. You listen to your body. You actually said, I don't care what anyone else says, I've got to have my breakfast. And if you feel like that, that's really great. What about drinks? Do you have coffee or do you just do water? What do you do?
I'm a huge water person. I have, I carry this big jug with me everywhere, and it has my electrolytes in it. I'm really big on electrolytes. I have got to have them. I noticed a complete difference in the way that I sleep and recover, just in day-to-day processes without them. I love my tea, my hot tea every night before bed. I've got to have my hot tea. It's like a dandelion tea, and it is just, I love that tea. I will not go to sleep without it. If I get home late, I'm like, oh, well, it's too bad. We're going to go to bed late tonight because we got to sit down and have our tea.
Well, yeah, you've got to have what you enjoy. So the electrolytes, that will get a question from people online. So is that just salt, or is it something you buy, like a packet?
I do like the element tea. It's little, and I'll always be honest, it's expensive to enjoy that. And so I'm always looking for affordability. I recently started using 40,000 volts, and it has all of the elements from the periodic table on it, and it's only $18. I love it. Just arrived yesterday, my next shipment of it. And I have it on subscribe and save on Amazon because it's just the best. It has your calcium, magnesium, it has boron, right? Which helps in your neurons as well. And then I also have Celtic sea salt. So I like to do a little bit of that on my meat. And then if you are dehydrated, like I love to be outside. I'm always doing yard work or doing something fun out in nature. That's my self-care. So like, for example, this morning I went out and got a good sweat on just being outside with my neighbors. So when I came back inside, I took a granule piece of Celtic sea salt, stuck it on my tongue, let it kind of just sit on my tongue and get that salty taste. And then I had a sip of water with it. And I feel so good. It's not inflammatory inducing. It's not your table salt. But if you are looking for something affordable to make sure you're getting those electrolytes, Celtic sea salt is only $9 on Amazon, and it's affordable. Put just a little bit in your water in the morning and balance those electrolytes so you have good hydration.
Yeah, 100% with you on that. I'm going to shout out Colt Milton, who put me onto the Celtic sea salt. It's fantastic, or Celtic salt, I should say. So, what about your social circle and colleagues? When you went to this way of eating, did you find people around you thought you were crazy, or did they support you? What was the reaction?
I think at first people were just kind of surprised, like you were known as the vegan. Like that's how everybody knew me as, was the vegan. And so when people saw me start eating meat, they were dumbfounded. One of my friends that's the manager of Vitamin Shop, when I went in to visit like a month ago, he was like, hey, let me show you our new vegan protein powder we got in. And I'm like, okay, I'll humor you for a minute. My parents and my sister and brother, I think they saw me get healthy, and they're like, hey, if she's healthy, she's eating, her gut's healthy, we support it 100%. So I got their support. And then my students, a lot of my students found me on different social media, and they saw me posting about meat, and they'll be like, you only eat meat? Isn't that crazy? Do you eat the fat? I'm like, yeah, I eat the fat. Ew, that's so gross. I can't believe that. It's so bad for you. So, you know, kids are just like, they don't understand, like, how can you just eat meat? And I'm like, how can you not?
Yes. And I think that's what we're fighting, isn't it? That grained washed society at the moment. But I love what you said about your parents, sister and brother. They've seen you get healthy, so they are more than happy. And that actually isn't always the scenario. You know, I do a lot of these interviews and I do a lot of coaching. And that's a big sticking block, you know, whether the social situation resolves or you get support from a partner or your family. It's all well-meaning, isn't it? That's the thing. Like when you said, like the kids, like, how can you eat your fat? It's, you know, it's well-meaning. It isn't malicious. But sadly, that's what we've got to change, that mindset where these things that we're doing are healthy and good for the environment and good for our health. So there was one thing that really flagged up, and I'm going to ask you this. You said early on in the interview that you put on 30 pounds. So you look pretty lean to me. So was there a time you looked at yourself and you thought you looked okay, but you were actually very underweight?
I didn't really think, like, I've always been tall and thin. I'm not like an endurance athlete or anything. I've always been skinny. When I was a little girl, my grandma used to make me drink Boost with my cousins. I had to take the Boost shake. I had to have extra butter on my food to gain weight, and I never gained weight. Now, when I went vegan and then I went raw vegan my last year or two as a vegan, I noticed that I was becoming severely underweight, but I didn't see it. Because remember, when we are so hyper-focused on health in the wrong way, and who's to say that I may not reevaluate what I'm eating down the road? But when we're so hyper-focused on making sure that everything is perfect and healthy and low calorie, and it just becomes disordered and it becomes unhealthy. And so I didn't see that I was losing weight. I just saw my mental health. And for me, a lot of the weight that I gained has been muscle. I'm still fairly lean, but I'm healthy. You know, I went to the doctor yesterday and got a checkup and had them look at my stool and had them look at my gut and had them look over my blood work. And they're just amazed, like, wow, you're really making steps to get healthy. And we see that our view of health is not your view of health. And it feels good when your doctor tells you that you need to be eating more liver to keep your blood healthy. So I was really proud of that. But, you know, it's a work in progress. And I think that we have to cut ourselves slack in our pursuit of health, because we are going to get it wrong and we are going to get it right. And that's where no diet fits one body. We are so diverse. And so all I can say from my own experience is learn your body, connect with your body. You have got to pay attention to the signals your body sends you when you are eating food.
That's great. A couple of things from your Instagram I just want to ask you to just expand on, because you mentioned cutting out environmental toxins. So what do you mean by that?
There are a lot of environmental toxins. For example, I don't wear aluminum-based deodorant. I personally, like, one of the biggest environmental toxins is like not spraying chemicals in your air. I have an air purifier at home and in my classroom. So I work in a very old building that has mold on the ceiling. My nose was running every single day and they never changed it. And I'm like, okay, well, I have to continue working in this environmentally toxic building. I've got to minimize as much exposure that I can while working in this environment. And so, you know, in our day-to-day life, we are putting lotion on our bodies, which gets past that dermal layer. If you have lots of the cheap oil-based, it gets soaked up by your skin. People fail to realize, yeah, you may not be focusing on what goes on your plate and what you eat, but this is your largest organ, your skin. What you put on your skin gets into your bloodstream. That then circulates through your body. You know, there are obesogens, a lot of these parabens that are in our perfumes. You know, if you're eating an appropriate diet, you shouldn't be putting on perfume. You don't stink. You don't need to smell better. You just need to smell like you. If you're taking a bath every day, you know, I live on a golf course, and I've been listening to a lot of podcasts where they say people that live on a golf course are twice as susceptible to environmental toxins, such as that glyphosate, such as different airborne pathogens. And so it's something that I'm still learning, but I don't have candles. I don't put different fabric softeners on my clothes. I tend to keep things very simple. I use white vinegar to clean, and just eliminating those exposures. And for many people that hear that, they're like, well, that's just too much. Well, start simple. Maybe instead of putting perfume on, you dab a little bit of essential oils on your skin. Or maybe instead of lighting that candle from Bath and Body Works that you love, maybe you put that away and just get a diffuser, or boil 2 cups of water with some cinnamon in it, and just allow natural things that don't hurt your health to be present. And a lot of us are at that age where we have children. What we do sticks in our body. And then when we get pregnant, all of those toxins go to the placenta and travel to that baby. And we wonder why we have an epidemic with children. What you do is so important. And I know that it sounds like, well, I'm an almond mom, or whatever this whole social narrative is now, where they're making fun of moms that are just maybe taking it a little too far, but they just want to keep their kids and themselves safe. And I completely am on board with that. In your pursuit of health, what does that look like for you? It looks different for everybody.
Yeah, that's such a brilliant answer. Thank you for that. And there's one little thing before I ask you my final question. I just want to thank you for being a science nerd and celebrating it, because I am too. In these interviews, we rarely get into the science, but one thing that just I would like to talk about, because you've put a question on your Instagram: should we really be avoiding IGF-1, which is the growth factor hormone, when it comes to taking in protein? Now, we eat a lot of protein. So could you just expand on what you were talking about there?
Well, I've been listening to Dr. Gundry, so I don't really watch TV. I am like, every time I get free time, I want to listen to research, and I want to know what people are looking into. I want to know what's happening in the literature. And someone posted something about Dr. Gundry saying that you only need as much protein per day of 2 eggs, 14 grams. And I thought to myself, okay, let me just try to see where he's coming from before I lose my mind. So then I pulled up his research podcast, and he was talking about IGF-1 and IGF-2. And these are growth stimulating hormones, which get into the receptors of the cell and promote growth. Well, if I'm going to the gym and I'm tearing my muscle apart, how do I repair it and grow the muscle? I need that growth factor hormone. I absolutely have to have it. But at what point is it too much? Am I taking in too much protein? And his argument was that people were taking in too much protein, going through gluconeogenesis. They were turning all of that protein into sugar, which, to support his argument, yes. But then you said that the brain loves sugar and the brain needs glucose to live. Well, if in fact the brain needs glucose to live, which you did state, then I should be taking an IGF-1 from the protein for then that gluconeogenesis to occur, for then those big protein molecules to be broken down into amino acids and transferred into glucose molecules to then feed my brain, as you're stating in your argument. So if in fact, why would IGF-1 and 2 be bad for me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's brilliant. You see, this is where it's not joined up, because you also find out that the brain needs 120 grams of glucose over a 24-hour period. So yeah, what's wrong with meat turning to sugar if it's going to go to your brain? I mean, there's so many little nuances that they just it's never joined up. That's it. Right, I'm going to finish with a very simple question, and I'm going to thank you for being so passionate. I really have enjoyed it. So here's a really simple question to end on. So we've got some people watching, and they're sitting on the fence. They're not sure whether to do carnivore or not. They find you quite compelling. They like your story. They can relate to it. What would you say to people that are sitting on the fence about carnivore? Because even you said, oh, eating meat, well, that sounds crazy, doesn't it, when you first heard it? What would you say to those people that are sitting on the fence?
Well, to the stranger that may hear this, I want you to know that I see you, I hear you, and your experience is valid. You don't have to pursue health out of wanting to be perfect. But the first step in making any lifestyle change is to check in with your mind and your body and make sure that they're in alignment. Because if your brain wants to go on a diet, but your gut's hungry, they're going to combat for energy. And so you need to have a deep conversation with yourself. Why? How is it going to happen? And what am I going to do in pursuit of that? What do I need to do to get closer to health? Maybe to reverse autoimmune conditions, maybe to lower inflammation, maybe to regulate my blood glucose metabolism, maybe to lower my cholesterol. By the way, your body needs cholesterol, so don't do that. How is this going to happen? How am I going to be able to afford this? What if I can't buy grass-fed, grass-finished? And what are the steps to get me closer to my goal? Remember, we don't go on a diet to get healthy and lose weight. We get healthy to lose weight and to enjoy vitality. And so if you're on the fence about carnivore, maybe you don't go in 150% like some of us do. There are moderators who can moderate their meat and sugar intake and their carb intake, and they're fine. There are abstainers, where many of us go hardcore into the carnivore space because we have pre-existing conditions. We have skin conditions, we have autoimmune disease, we have pre-existing conditions with mental health, gut health, physical health. And so you need to ask yourself where you fall in that category, right? It can be super simple, and I don't want it to be complex, but I want you to look at your plate and ask yourself, am I getting enough protein, right? Am I getting enough fat? And maybe that's starting with just a couple of extra eggs instead of your smoothie, right? Switch out some of the ideas of health that are no longer aligning with you and trade. Maybe I take out that protein shake and add in 3 boiled eggs. Maybe instead of having a coffee, I have bone broth, which will lower my cortisol response in the morning time. Maybe I have a hot tea in the afternoon instead of a coffee. Maybe I focus on water and electrolytes. Maybe I focus on buying more beef, or maybe just more chicken or more pork, or maybe I look within the community. Let me tell you, there are so many people in the community that are selling eggs. Let eggs be your first introduction. And then once you've integrated that, then reach out and try some beef, then try chicken. Not everyone's going to eat red meat 24/7, but diverse your palate. Figure out what meats work for your body and how you can implement them into your daily life. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Wow, that was really interesting. I love that guest. Absolutely amazing. If you like stuff like that, don't forget to look at this video next. And while you're at it, look in the description, download the Carnivore Experience app.